Hi and welcome to the Mailbox. This is a weekly bit where I go through some of the comments on various platforms, whether it be on Patreon, Twitter, Curious Cat, mostly YouTube, that are worth exploring a little bit more or giving a fuller answer. Or they might not be questions, they might be just comments that I want to talk about a little bit more. So the first one is up from Twitter. The general theme this week is likely to be around the Netherlight, Crucible and Flying on Argus, seeing as those were the two most significant videos I did in the last week. But there's a few others as well. This first one from Twitter is, of course, about the Relic. So I was saying that in my chest this week, I was very lucky. I got a nice 845 item level Relic with a Bist trait on it. So at the moment, you would think, oh yeah, definitely slot it. But I said I'm waiting for the Netherlight Crucible because there is a chance, as high item level as it is, and as good the trait as it is, it might not be an upgrade, depending on what it gets on the Netherlight Crucible. So I said I'm going to hold on to it. So one comment here says, as long as it's not a defensive trait you will get from it, you should be fine, since you can't get the same trait as it's on the Relic. No, but it's got nothing to do with whether it's defensive or not. All I know from the Relic I got is that the extra trait cannot possibly be a Wrath of the Ashbringer trait, which is my personal BIS one. It could be the second BIS one though, okay, it's fantastic. And also we cannot discount the second tier of hidden abilities. These are not traits, these are something different. They can be fairly powerful or fairly uninspiring as well. So the combination of the extra trait that you get, as well as that second ability, if on the Relic I get the worst possible choice of second tier and hidden traits, whereas the one I might replace otherwise would end up getting the best ones, then I haven't made a good decision. Even though I would never find out about how bad the decision was because I'll have destroyed the first one, which is why I'm keeping it for now. So the way I can look at it at the moment is I have 3 Holy Relics for 2 Holy Relic slots, and after the Netherlight Crucible is released, I ought to be able to sim it and see which one's best. Simming it, by the way, is not going to be a straightforward act. I am told that raid bots allows you to sim now, but I've been looking at it myself, and for me, for some reason, it's not really working. So I'm either doing something badly wrong, or there's some trick to it, because it's not simming relics for me at all. But yeah, you can do it on Simcraft. I'm not doing a video on that. It's fairly... It's one of those things where you don't have to do it that much. You don't get upgrades of relics very often, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's lots of code putting in. The relics were always an awkward thing to put into Simcraft. And you have to be very careful not to rub out the wrong numbers and so on. But yeah, it's not made any easier with the Crucible. On to the YouTube comments then. The first one, this is a flying one. So there's a couple of parts to this comment. First one says, I really like the no fly on Argus. So it says, so one, it's good for world PvP. Now, that's the one I really want to tackle here. No such thing as world PvP. What there is people ganking. I have noticed that is on the increase. Like, I've played on PvP servers now since late MOP. You know, I was on PvE servers forever. Because whenever I say I don't like world PvP, well, people go, well, why are you on a PvP server? It's because that's where all the guilds are. That's where all the actual raid guilds are. To raid, you have to be on a PvP server. Or almost certainly. I mean, there's some that get away with it. So, yeah. Mostly I don't get bothered, I have to say, on my main. Even in Legion, where I think there's been more opportunities where you can... Because of this open tag system, especially on main, like, world quest bosses and stuff like that, there's often times when you can take a little nibble out of someone accidentally. They might do the same to you. I don't really make a big deal of it. But on Arg, in terms of deliberate attempts to kill me, they have skyrocketed on Argus. Now, on my Paladin, of course, they tend to come a cropper on that. There was quite a funny one last week. Unfortunately, I wasn't streaming at the time. It was absolutely hilarious, though. I was going around with my monk on my other account, just dragging it, it's very low geared, dragging it around world quests, as I sometimes do with low item level ones, because in case they do get ganked, I can, like, exact retribution, if you'll pardon the pun. So, and this happened, like, several horde, and in particular a demon hunter. There's a demon hunter and a few others, and they killed my monk, and I killed them. But then they came back and killed me again. So they actually killed my paladin. They ganged up on me. Which is fine. But, well, it's not fine. I actually don't enjoy doing that. But never mind. So what I did, I had a cunning plan. So I got both of my characters to go back to their corpse, but I just released or got the corpse back on my monk and left it there as bait. And sure enough, the demon hunter came back, attacked my monk again. I straight away went onto my paladin, bang, killed him 3 times in the end. But so after that, he puckered off. But in general, although I can take care of it myself, it's still inconvenient to me. I always think with world PvP in the game, it's totally non-consensual. So in a way that's not obviously the case in a battleground or arena, something like that, where you're going there specifically to PvP. I always feel it's a bit like a group of people, let's say on a public court, playing a bit of basketball, and someone else comes in and just takes the ball and starts doing what they want to do with that ball as well. That person might think it was great fun, but the other guys don't really. They're not finding it fun. It's the same sort of thing here. And I know battlegrounds and arenas might not be everyone's cup of tea, and this is because Blizzard don't really have proper world PvP as it should be. But yeah, so I'm not at all in favour of that. But I can well see how not having flying will aid potentially the world PvP. But I can also see how it can work the other way, because for gankers, surely it's better to be able to swoop on your targets as well. Because, you can't fly everywhere when you're doing your quest in itself. And that's why we're on Argus after all. Most of it is to do world quests at the moment, isn't it? There's no other reason to be there, I suppose, apart from mining and herbing. So, yeah, if you were flying, you might actually find greater ganking opportunities. So I'm not quite sure about that one. And then it says here, with all the little things they have hidden on Argus, I would get bored in like 2 days tops if I could fly. Some people will argue they're bored already, which was my great fear with it. It's all right saying, oh, 3 new zones with a new patch. You very quickly run out of it. It's just world quests. It's all the same stuff. So I'm not quite sure how flying would do that personally. And when they say little things that they've hidden on Argus, there's not a lot hidden on Argus. Compared to the Broken Isles, there's far less. The zones are like shadows of what the main ones were, because again, I think they've spent much less time on it. But then the second point here, an interesting one. Someone did actually give an answer to this, which I'm broadly in agreement with. But it says here, it confuses me that the US forums are full of threads, bring back flying or how dare you take flying away, does not seem to be a big issue in EU or Asia. I can't speak for Asia because I wouldn't be able to speak any of the languages on the Asian forums, so I certainly don't look at those. I think in the EU there might be just as much consternation or whatever. I think probably the balance of people that want flying and don't is probably the same in EU as North America. You may not see as many posts or notice as many posts on it on the EU because they never get answered. So you can imagine like that post that I was looking at there with that community manager responding on it, that thread would never have got to the size it was anywhere near it were it not for the fact that there were blue responses. Because as soon as someone is responding from Blizzard, other people will start putting into it where they might not have ordinarily, because maybe they'll get a response. Ultimately, when people post on the forums, some people will post on the forums because they want their fellow players to engage in a conversation. Mostly people post on them because they want Blizzard to respond. I think that's the case anyway. Obviously, I can't say that's definitely the case. That's my opinion. And that never happens on the EU. When you look at, and you can look on the blue tracker, the difference between posts, like blue posts on North American forums and blue posts on the EU forums. Blue posts on the EU forums are in the following categories. First of all, copy and paste of a post that was already been put on the North American forums. Secondly, and this is quite common, berating a necro post. In other words, a post that was made a year or so ago, someone's resurrected it, and the blue is just basically going, you shouldn't really be doing that. So they're not actually saying anything, they're just giving a reason why they're sort of locking the post or whatever. And then another reason is for locking posts due to inappropriate language or something like that, or it being derailed. The only ones they actually respond to in an actual response way is something very, very light-hearted. They never respond to anything controversial, ever. So someone might ask a question, like happened a couple of weeks ago. Oh, what's the stupidest thing you did when you were a new player? So someone, one of the community managers, if I can call them that, community muggins, I think, would be a better response when they're on the EU ones. They responded to that one, so it's light-hearted. They occasionally do, but they almost never respond. But they certainly never respond or get into a discussion on anything remotely controversial. So the reason why you don't see as many of those posts in the EU is just because there's no engagement. Most people, as I say on the forums, I really don't think discussing with each other very often. They want Blizzard to respond. Next one. This is where I talk about surveys, which I always talk about. It says, one thing you mentioned was surveys. I think the issue with surveys is, quite frankly, it will be a mess. Everyone is a minority in the game, and like everything will be on the no. So we'll take a couple of points first of all. So that one wouldn't really be true. If you're going to say because what I was suggesting is, say how much you enjoy content on a scale of 1 to 5, which they used to do, by the way, in like betas. Never live in game, but in betas they used to do this. I remember very distinctly in Wrath, whenever you completed a bit of content when you're doing the Wrath beta, it asked you how much you enjoyed it. It doesn't do that anymore. But it doesn't do it in live, which is the key thing. If people said that they didn't enjoy content to every question, why would they be playing the game? By definition, if you're playing the game, there's content you enjoy doing. And then there's content you don't enjoy doing. And then there's content, as I say, that's why you wouldn't just say yes or no, like a scale of 1 to 5, which is obviously subjective, but nonetheless gives a strength of feeling. So let's say 5 is you think this content is amazing, and 1 is you would prefer it if this content was not in at all. You actually find it detrimental to your enjoyment of the game. And 3 was you can take it or leave it. If it's in, you just won't do it. But if it was taken, you wouldn't care. So you could also get a strength of feeling on it as well. So you certainly wouldn't get people putting 1 for everything, because why would they be playing the game? Then the next point is plus get 1 million WoW players in a room and you'll end up with 1,000,001 different ideas on how to go for blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, of course. But a survey isn't a discussion. Yes, if you get any number of people to discuss how to do something, the more people you have, it becomes an exponentially increasing amount of time it will take to come to any sort of decision. Yes. But no one's asking. And no one would ask in a survey, what do you think we should do in the game? No one would be asking any open-ended questions. Apart from anything else, you couldn't possibly read all the responses. You need something where a computer can sort the responses and just do a quick snapshot of the stats. So it has to be closed questions, just how much you enjoy this content. No discussion about it at all. So no, surveys are the only thing you can do to gauge how much people enjoy content. There is no other way of inferring it. You've got to ask people. You can't just guess. Too many people make assumptions, which was another topic of this week, but I'm not going to discuss it here. There it says here, this is Netherlight Crucible 1. So it says, I noticed as you moved your mouse from tier to tier, the lightning bolts connecting them would light up. Is this just a visual effect on Blizzard's part, or can I not get the far right trait in tier 3 if I take the shadow trait far left in tier 2? This is an excellent question. I cannot properly answer it because I don't have a character with high enough artifact level to have got, because you'd need 69 to get the first hidden trait. So that's the, and that's the, on the first relic. So that's the only way you'd be able to tell for certain. But I am making the, and this is an assumption I'm making myself, I am assuming that those lightning bolts do indeed indicate that if you take on the second tier down, the leftmost one, you've got a choice of the left 2 hidden traits and not the third one. Because otherwise, why are those, as you call them, lightning bolts there? There's no other purpose to them that I can see. But I don't know specifically. I haven't seen anyone say anything. I haven't seen anyone be able to work it out from Wowhead, and I haven't seen Blizzard say anything definitive about it either. So what we really need to be 100% sure is either for Blizzard to say something, or for someone to get artifact level 69 and go, hang on a minute, I wanted that one and I can't do it. So I don't know, but I strongly suspect, yes, you don't get a complete choice of whichever of the second tier and whichever of the third tier. But that's an assumption, I don't know. Next one, it says, why not slot it in your right hand Holy Relic? So this is going back to the Holy... So on my weapon, it's like Holy Relic, Fire Relic, Holy Relic. So the good Holy Relic I got, I could have slotted into either of the two holy relics currently slotted, because they're both the same. At the moment, they are both exactly the same. They're 840 item level, and they both have the same trait. So in theory, at the moment, I could slot it into either one. It doesn't matter. So what this person is basically suggesting is, if I slot it into the right-hand relic, it's going to be quite a while before a consequence occurs as a result of choosing that. The suggestion seems to be that by the time I get my artifact up to level... I wouldn't have to get it even up to level 75, by the way, to come a cropper on this. The assumption is that it's all about the hidden trait. You've got to remember that second tier. So you only have to get up to 66 before there is an actual consequence, by the way, which would be much sooner than you think. But the other thing is this. Under normal... If I was talking about a 910 item level relic, then you could certainly argue that. But this is an 845 relic. Even in a month's time, I would be very, very lucky to get another relic that is going to rival that 845 in power. So, you know, just sort of suggesting it's going to be a long time before I get level 75 where the consequence really hits home. But as I say, in reality, it's actually not 75, it's 66. Even then, that relic, I can't imagine getting rid of that relic before Antorus comes out the next raid. Because it's so high up. It can only possibly be 10 item levels higher if I get max Titan Forge on it. So, no. But the other thing just to bear in mind is I can find out on Wednesday. It's not like I'm holding on to it forever. I can find out on Wednesday what traits it's got when I slot it into the Netherlight crucible, and then I can go from there. And then the next one here says, blah, 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 until you hit Artifact 75 will help your guild on progression. Actually, it won't. You could be sitting on an upgrade for a month at least. Again, this month thing. No, it's not a month. You don't need to wait until you can access the trait. You only need to wait until you can see the trait, which we see the trait next reset. You're holding on to it for a week. And in fact, talking about it says like very bad form for a raider who'll be putting the team first. You're actually putting your team first by giving yourself the bigger upgrade on the item. You know, that's putting the team first. Putting the team first is making sure that your character is as powerful as it can be. And for the sake of having what is a slight upgrade for 1 week and then potentially a downgrade for the next few months, that just seems silly to me. Anyway, next comment. Oh, this is about demonetization of YouTube. Yes, of course. So it says here, so what I've said on this one is, this has suddenly, I mean, this was a thing like 6 months ago, but they've now really rolled it out to cover lots and lots of smaller channels, including gaming channels. So I haven't had that many flagged. I've had quite a lot. I would say more than 50% of mine have been flagged, but they've always come back as being fine when I've sort of requested a review. In fact, here's the irony. Sometimes there's been a couple of videos where I've just thought to myself, do you know what, I can't even be bothered to review it. And I haven't, because I don't expect to get large views on those videos anyway. And even then, it's been reviewed and come back clean anyway, even though I haven't requested it. It's really weird. I don't know how that system works. But it says anyway, the ironic part is that so many of the things I watched are demonetized that I have not seen a YouTube ad in about 3 months. So the advertiser's money is wasted on me. Yes, it is. And YouTube know that as well. They obviously feel that they've got a real PR problem, though. They've got to satisfy... I mean, it's an attack by the media, really, on YouTube here. But they've got to satisfy the public that they've done what they need to do. It says, Google show ads to you based on the viewer's habits, not the video's content. I'm not sure that's always true, actually. I'm not quite sure how it all works. But one thing I see an awful lot of adverts on stuff I've got no interest in at all. Like, literally, no, it's like, I've never done a search for anything even remotely like this. I can understand how, in theory, it should be. And probably it's trying to be. But it doesn't have to get it wrong for me in a lot of cases. Like, so many videos of... And it's not just that the videos aren't of interest. The product itself, it's like, I would never use that product. I've never searched for anything even remotely like that product. But maybe that's not the case for other people. I don't know. It says, not the video's content. So advertising should not be an issue. But, well, as I say, it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue for YouTube, and it wasn't an issue for the advertisers. What we have to remember is this was an issue for the media. But you've got to remember, YouTube are in competition with, the newspapers are, they're struggling to make money. There was a time when people just bought newspapers. That's much less the case now. The internet is a threat to the traditional media, but they're very powerful still. They're hugely powerful. And they are trying to attack what they see as their competition. Whenever you get any huge technological change, these sort of things always happen. The old order wants to hold on to its power and influence and attack the new technology as somehow immoral. We've seen this so many times before. There was a time with margarine, when margarine first came into being, or vegetable spread, should we say, because technically not all vegetable spreads are margarine. And there was a situation, I can't remember which country this is. I think it was actually the United States where this happened, but it may not have been. But there was a time, a very long time ago now, where the dairy industry, because this was seen as a competition to butter, because it spread straight away and all the rest of it much easier. And they somehow lobbied the government to get them to dye it red, as if to say, don't let anyone be confused that this is clearly not butter, blah, blah, blah. And we've got to dye it red to show that, in an attempt to make it actually off-putting for people. So this sort of thing happens all the time. It says if they'd both stood their ground, this might have been a small blip and everyone could have moved on. But, they obviously felt that, well, these advertisers, as I say, it's the advertisers that needed to have stood their ground but didn't. I'm not going to say they were wrong not to, because the media is very, very powerful and influential. It says, not to mention with the ability of Google to get information out to the public, it could have easily won the public opinion war. I don't think it's in that position yet. I actually genuinely don't. I don't think Google does have the power to get a message out in the way that the media do. Because Google is a platform for other people to put their message onto it. It doesn't really do it itself in the same way that a newspaper company does. So, yeah, I think at some point this will be the future. And at some point, these newspapers are just like King Canute trying to command back the sea. And eventually, it'll come away. But they are going to slow it down as much as they can. So just as a side note, I really do blame the media for being so dense. They do not understand targeted advertising and the desire to control the information, blah, blah, blah. But somebody at some point is going to have to stand up to them. All these major companies, including Google, missed a great opportunity to do just that. Maybe. I think the technology will eventually take hold. But I just don't think it's in that position just yet. That's my opinion anyway. But in terms of in my particular situation, yes, it's hugely annoying. But not everything of mine is flagged. But for some people's it is. Some people's are just getting stuff flagged all the time. But what does annoy me is that when, it's not even like I've requested a review on something and they've come back and said, no, do you know what, we're still banning it. It hasn't happened. My last few haven't been flagged at all, I have to say. I haven't had anything flagged in like the last week as well. So maybe just like some channels are getting themselves on a bit of a blacklist. I don't know whether that's even true or a thing, but maybe if some people are always getting them flagged and they're not coming back clean after a review, it's a bit like, well, a lot of your stuff's really bad. Maybe mine, it's getting a better reputation amongst the algorithm. I don't know, because the algorithm is there to learn, isn't it? And they will presumably keep refining it. So hopefully at some point, although it's very damaging potentially for people who need it, that at some point it will be refined, is all we can hope. Next one. This was about the Illidan cinematic, and I just thought, ooh. So, this person saying, the Legion is trying to stop the Void. They are, which is true. The Naru are trying to stop the Legion. The Naru are Void Gods in disguise. I don't think they're Void Gods, but maybe, just maybe, I'm trying to think now when I read this comment, the Naru, I suppose it's not beyond all possibility that they are servants of the old gods. This is possible. Because now that I think about it, the Naru haven't had a lot to do with Azeroth directly. Remember, the Naru have mostly been about helping the Draenei. So they haven't been instrumental in any attack, as far as I can think, on the old gods themselves, on Azeroth or on any other world. Possible, isn't it? Isn't it possible? So here was me sort of thinking maybe you've got the Naru and the light on one side and you've got the void on the other, which I still think is probably the case. And that neither one's good or evil in itself. They just have different ideas about the way life should flourish in the universe. But could they all be the same? And that Sargeras was actually opposing them. And that's why the Naru are against the Legion. It's possible, isn't it? It is possible. Interesting thoughts. Next one. Am I the only one who doesn't mind a content drought during the end of a WoW expansion? I really like those 6 to 10 months of no WoW. I enjoy going back to the games that I miss because I'm so busy with WoW. So do I. So do a lot of players. I'm not sure Blizzard think that's in their best interest, though. That's the problem. What inevitable... I mean, again, it's very difficult to know what Blizzard's strategy is on players in terms of maintaining enough players playing the game. We've already discussed this in the past, haven't we, on this channel, about how do Blizzard even actively try and get new people into the game? They put some things in to ease the passage, but there's so much more they could do that some people have suggested that Blizzard are not at all interested. They're more focused on retaining players. And I think there's some credibility to that view. Now, if we take the view that indeed Blizzard are focused on retaining players, having a big content drought where you let them go off and play other games is not good. I think for two reasons. One is in that intervening period, I mean, I suppose raiders will still stay subscribed as I do because you'll still be doing your farm content every week. But for others, they'll just stop subscribing. You're losing a lot of revenue there. But then here's the issue. Can you trust them to play the next expansion? Not necessarily. Every year you get a situation, don't you, where people, raiders, I can only talk about raiders because that's who I associate with. Obviously, there are many, many more players of World of Warcraft that are not into organised raiding. So I don't know what the feeling in those sort of guilds is. Maybe someone can explain. But what you notice in a raiding guild is people quite like, and they get into a nice little habit of, they come on for raid day, do the raid, and it's like, right, thanks very much, see you next week. Some of them, are still on the game in that intervening week, but a lot of them will just, that'll be it. And the rest of the time, they'll be going playing other games. I would love to do that. The other games I would like to play and just play WoW once a week. Every now and then, I'm not saying all the time, I only want to play WoW once a week, because if I did, I would just go casual and do that. But no, but it is nice to have that little gap. Especially as I would hopefully be occupied with the next expansion anyway, for testing it. So yeah, but the thing is, you always notice when it comes to coming back, and all of a sudden then you're requiring your guild, the main raiders in that guild, to be playing every day, leveling up characters, gearing them up, getting back into raiding. Some people just think to themselves, do you know what, I quite like just playing it once a week. I don't really want to come back full time. And they stop. So yeah, Blizzard obviously don't want that situation to happen, do they? Or they want it to happen with as few people as possible. So yeah, it's not in Blizzard's interest to do that. So they're never going to let us do that, because it's just letting us go to our competitor. Next one. So I think you forgot to address one thing. Legion as an expansion is pushing a large amount of people who never liked running around the open world, so this is flying one again, into doing world content. For them, the lack of flying feels even more like a kick to the face, as they aren't just pushed towards doing a large amount of content they don't find interesting in any way, they are also prevented from doing it in a fast and efficient manner. Certainly something I would have sympathy for, because as I've said before, for me, there's two aspects to the game, World of Warcraft, that I really, really like, that I just think is better than most, if not all, of the MMOs. One is the raiding. That's the be-all and end-all for me, really. The quality of the raiding is excellent. If it weren't for the raiding, I wouldn't play the game at all. So, for me, raiding. But there is another one. I actually enjoy the questing, the storylines in quests. I quite like the leveling experience. Okay, I think some expansions have done it better than others, but I do quite like, you know, doing those story. And now, of course, they're trying to change it so that we don't associate quests with just leveling, that they've actually got quests, like storylines, after level cap that you can only access at level cap as well. You know, those sort of things. Obviously, I like to be able to take and leave them, because I'm not saying I find all of them interesting, but I do quite like those sort of lore quest storylines. They're interesting to me. But those are the two aspects of the game I really like. Other aspects of the game I can take or leave. And I quite like to not take them too much. So, yeah, I'd have sympathy for this one as well. That being said, yeah, and it would be nice to be able to do it more efficiently as well. You know, I've not been able to get as much artifact power because, you know, I occupy my time with other things. I don't want to just be doing world quests all the time like I was yesterday, and will have to today as well, because it's dull. I don't want to do that. I feel compelled to do it. And it would be nice, yeah, from my point of view, even though I am on the camp of would rather flying wasn't in the game, yeah, I would quite like to be able to just fly around and do it as quickly as possible at least. So yeah, that's worth looking at, that sort of opinion, I guess, as well. But I don't know how many that applies to. I can well imagine it applies to a significant number of players there. And the last comment says, in my opinion, only if they are not going to bring flying in Argus. I don't think they can. I don't really, honestly, I don't technically think they can. I don't think it's just a philosophy discussion. I just don't think they can. Are not going to bring flying Argus. They need to remove days from the Argus mobs getting dismounted every second. Is absolutely ridiculous. This, yeah, it's not really had been an issue for me. In fact, I've only been knocked off my horse once, but probably the reason for that, and there are some things you can do about it, is because obviously on my character it's pretty well, even my alts are reasonably well geared, but my main character is very well geared. Being knocked off your horse has more to do with the damage you take. So if you, like, as a proportion of your health, I'm not sure of the exact nature of it, but nonetheless, if you've got more health or you take less damage, whatever, you won't get knocked off your horse as easily. So, for example, tanks, very unlikely to get knocked off their horse. You know, as I've got quite a lot of health, I'm unlikely to get knocked off my horse as well. Which is why I've only been knocked off once. And that was when I was slowing down anyway. Because the other thing is you can sort of try and learn to, you know, looking ahead, try and pull as few things as possible. Sometimes what you try and do is bisect two mobs, but you end up pulling both of them. Sometimes it's just better to go, I know I'm going to get caught by one of them, go on the outside edge of one, stuff like that. But there are practical things you can do. Pride as, if you have that, that can be a useful thing. Remember, the legendaries you wear for, say, dungeons and raids are not necessarily the most suitable for solo world quests anyway. You could always just use Pride as, if that's a possibility for you. Someone actually said in the reply to this, which was not a particularly polite reply, about using hoof plates. None of the hoof plates prevent you getting dazed. And apart from anything else, those that blacksmiths make, it says on the thing it only works in the Broken Isles anyway. Now, I suppose it's possible it works on Argus as well, it just doesn't say in the text. But neither of them prevent you getting knocked off your horse. One of them just allows you to interact with objects without being dismounted. It's not the same thing as being beaten off your horse. And the other one just allows you to go faster. But as I say, the text only says works in Broken Isles. There is something I think leather workers can make that's supposed to help with being dazed. But again, I think that only works. I'm not 100% on this. I think that only works on the Broken Isles as well. So unless they haven't updated the text, probably wouldn't work on Argus. But Pride as is a suitable thing to do. And as I say, if you, as you get more gear, you will find it happens less because you're beefier, you're stronger, and you don't take as much damage relative to how much damage you can take. So anyway, there we go. Those are some of the comments for this week. I'll be back with this again this time next week as well. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.